The stars looked different from the observation deck of the UES horizon. Commander Alex Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the dark space around him. After 20 years in Earth's United Space Force, he thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. "Commander, you need to see this." Lieutenant Ben Morgan's voice broke the silence. The young officer's face looked pale even in the dim light of the deck. Reed turned away from the viewport. "What is it, Morgan?" "Sir, long-range scanners picked up something approaching from the outer system. It's big. Really big." Reed followed, Morgan to the bridge where the rest of the crew stood frozen, eyes fixed on the main screen. The object moving toward them was unlike anything humans had built. Its shape reminded Reed of a giant arrowhead, sleek and purposeful, with strange, pulsing lights along its hull. "Is it responding to our signals?" Reed asked. Communications Officer Lisa Park shook her head. "No, sir, we've tried all standard frequencies." Reed felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came before battle. "Alert Earth Command. Tell them, we have a first contact situation." Before Park could send the message, the ship's systems flickered. A moment later, the main screen changed. Instead of showing the approaching vessel, it displayed a face. At least Reed thought it was a face. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, skin that looked like polished stone, and no visible mouth. When it spoke, the words seemed to form directly in Reed's mind. "Humans of Earth, we are the Vorn. We have watched your world for many cycles. The time for observation has ended. The time for judgment begins." Reed stepped forward. As ship commander, First Contact Protocol made him Earth's representative. "This is Commander Alex Reed of the United Earth Space Force. We welcome peaceful contact with your people." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Peace. You speak of peace while your history drowns in war. We have studied your combat. It is unrefined." Reed kept his face neutral despite the insult. "Our past doesn't define our future. We've united our planet and moved beyond our old conflicts." "Have you?" The alien's tone felt cold in Reed's mind. "Or have you simply found no worthy opponents among your own kind?" The bridge fell silent. Reed chose his next words carefully. "We prefer diplomacy to combat, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand, human. We do not threaten. We evaluate. I am General Dorn of the Vorn High Command. Combat is the measure by which we judge all species. Yours is lacking." Reed felt his jaw tighten. "With respect, General, you can't judge an entire species without knowing them. But we do know you," Dorn replied. "We have watched your wars, studied your tactics. You fight without discipline, without honor. Your combat is chaos." "Perhaps you've misunderstood what you've seen," Reed suggested. Dorn's eyes pulsed with a blue light. "To prove our assessment correct, we will send representatives to your planet. Your leaders will meet with ours. If you impress us, perhaps there is hope for cooperation between our kinds." The screen went dark before Reed could respond. 3 days later, Reed stood in the grand meeting hall of the United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. Around him, Earth's highest-ranking military and political leaders waited nervously. The Vorn ship had entered Earth orbit that morning, causing worldwide panic despite government assurances. President Kate Wilson approached Reed. "Commander, you're the only human who's spoken with them. What should we expect?" Reed shook his head. "They're different, Madam President. They seem fixated on combat as a measure of civilization, and they don't think much of ours." Wilson frowned. "That's concerning, considering their technology is clearly advanced beyond ours." Before Reed could respond, the room's massive doors slid open. 5 Vorn entered, each at least 7 feet tall. Their stone-like skin gleamed under the lights, and they moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single machine. General Dorn led the group, his 4 eyes scanning the room before settling on Reed. "The observer," he said, the words again forming directly in everyone's minds. "You will translate our concepts if needed." President Wilson stepped forward, extending her hand in greeting. "General Dorn, welcome to Earth. I'm President Kate Wilson." Dorn ignored her hand. "Your greeting customs are noted but unnecessary. We are here to evaluate, not to form bonds." Wilson lowered her hand slowly. "Evaluate what, exactly?" "Your worthiness," Dorn replied simply. "The galaxy contains many species. Resources are finite. Those who cannot defend themselves cannot claim a place among the stars." Admiral James Turner, head of Earth's unified military, moved to stand beside Wilson. "Are you threatening us, General?" Dorn's upper eyes blinked slowly. "No threat, merely reality. Show us your combat capabilities. Prove you understand the art of war." Turner glanced at Wilson, who nodded slightly. "We can arrange demonstrations of our military technologies and tactics." "Good," Dorn said. "But first we will share ours, to establish a baseline." One of the other Vorn stepped forward, holding what looked like a small metal sphere. He placed it on the floor and stepped back. The sphere rose into the air, projecting a three-dimensional image of a planet much like Earth. "This was the world of the Krell," Dorn explained. They too thought they understood combat. The planet in the hologram suddenly erupted with explosions, entire continents disappearing in flashes of light. Within seconds, nothing remained but a dead, smoking rock. The room fell silent. "That," Dorn said quietly, "is refined combat. Quick, efficient, total." President Wilson's face had gone pale. "That's not combat, that's genocide." Dorn's eyes pulsed. "A meaningless distinction. The purpose of combat is victory." Reed felt sick watching the hologram. He stepped forward. "The purpose of combat is to achieve objectives. Total destruction is rarely the objective." Dorn turned to him. "Explain." "War isn't about destroying your enemy completely," Reed said. "It's about achieving specific goals with minimum necessary force. Sometimes the goal is making your enemy stop fighting without destroying them." "Inefficient," another Vorn said. "Admiral," Turner joined in. "Not at all. If you destroy everything, what have you won? An empty rock? True victory preserves what you're fighting for." Dorn made a dismissive gesture. "Words. We require demonstration, not philosophy. Tomorrow, we will observe your military capabilities." As the Vorn delegation departed, Reed caught President Wilson's eye. She motioned him to follow her to a private room where Admiral Turner and several other officials gathered. "Thoughts?" Wilson asked the group. Turner spoke first. "They're testing us. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done it already." "I agree," Reed said, "but I'm concerned about their fixation on combat prowess. They clearly don't understand our approach to warfare." Dr. Anna Lee, the leading xenopsychologist, shook her head. "Their entire culture seems built around combat as the ultimate measure of worth. To them, our reluctance to embrace total war might look like weakness, not wisdom." "So what do we show them tomorrow?" Wilson asked. Turner considered this. "Our best technologies, certainly. But I think Commander Reed should lead the demonstrations." Reed looked surprised. "Sir? You've fought in more campaigns than anyone else here," Turner explained. "From the Arctic Resource Wars to the Mars Colony Rebellion. You understand combat in different environments against different enemies, and more importantly, you understand that combat is about more than just destruction." Wilson nodded. "I agree. Commander Reed, you'll head the demonstration team. Show the Vorn that humans understand combat better than they think." The next morning, Reed stood on the vast training grounds of the North American Defense Complex. Behind him, Earth's most advanced battle systems were arranged for demonstration. Tanks, aircraft, power armor units, and even a small orbital strike platform had been prepared. The Vorn delegation arrived precisely on time, moving in perfect formation as always. General Dorn approached Reed. "Begin," was all he said. For the next 3 hours, Reed led demonstrations of Earth's military capabilities. Tanks crushed obstacles, aircraft performed impossible maneuvers, soldiers in power armor demonstrated their enhanced strength and speed. Through it all, the Vorn watched without comment, their stone faces unreadable. Finally, Reed brought them to the command center, where a large simulation screen dominated one wall. "This is our combat simulation system," Reed explained. "We use it to train officers and test strategies without risking lives." Dorn's eyes pulsed with interest. "Show us." Reed nodded to the technician, who started the simulation. It showed a vastly outnumbered human force defending against an overwhelming enemy. "This scenario is impossible to win through direct confrontation," Reed explained. "The defending force must use the environment, psychological warfare, and unconventional tactics." The Vorn watched as the simulated human forces split up, set ambushes, cut supply lines, and gradually wore down their numerically superior enemy without ever engaging in a pitched battle. When the simulation ended with the larger force surrendering, Dorn turned to Reed. "This is not combat, this is trickery." Reed smiled slightly. "This is human combat, General. We evolved fighting not just each other, but the harshest environments of our world. We learned to use every advantage, to adapt to any situation. Sometimes the smartest strategy is avoiding direct confrontation altogether." Dorn's eyes darkened. "Deception and evasion, these are not the marks of true warriors." "With respect," Reed replied, "survival against superior forces is exactly what marks true warriors. Anyone can win with overwhelming force. The real test is winning when everything is against you." For a long moment, Dorn stared at Reed. Then he turned to his companions and made a series of clicking sounds, their actual language, Reed realized. After what seemed like an argument, Dorn faced Reed again. "Your demonstrations have been educational, Commander, but unconvincing. True combat follows order, discipline, overwhelming force. Your approach is primitive, relying on chaos and deception." Reed felt his patience wearing thin. "General, with all due respect, you're missing the point. There is no single true combat. Combat evolves based on necessity and environment." "Enough," Dorn said sharply. "We have seen sufficient evidence. Humans are unworthy of galactic cooperation. Your combat philosophy is fundamentally flawed." As the Vorn turned to leave, Reed called after them. "You're making a mistake, General. You think you understand combat, but you've only seen one kind." Dorn paused. "Is that a challenge, Commander?" Reed stood his ground. "It's a fact. And if you force us to prove it, you might not like the lesson." Dorn's eyes flashed. "Then let the lesson begin. In one Earth month, we will return to test your combat worthiness directly. Prepare yourselves." As the Vorn departed, Reed felt the weight of what had just happened. He had essentially started a war with an alien civilization far more advanced than Earth. Admiral Turner approached him. "Well, that could have gone better." Reed shook his head. "They never intended it to go well, sir. They've already decided we're inferior. Now they want to prove it." "Can we beat them?" Turner asked quietly. Reed watched the Vorn ship rise into the sky. "Not their way, but they don't understand human combat yet, and that might be our only advantage." Turner nodded grimly. "Then we'd better make it count. 1 month to prepare for a war with an enemy we barely understand." 1 month, Reed agreed, to show them what human combat really means. 1 month wasn't much time to prepare for war. Commander Alex Reed knew this better than anyone as he stood in the underground war room beneath Geneva. Around him, Earth's top military minds argued loudly over strategies and tactics. "We should strike first." General Harris pounded his fist on the table. "Use everything we have before they return." Admiral Turner shook his head. "With what? Their ships can cross solar systems, ours barely reach Mars." "We hide then," another officer suggested. "Scatter our forces, go underground." President Wilson raised her hand for silence. The room quieted immediately. "These suggestions assume we've already lost. I didn't choose any of you for your defeatist attitudes." She turned to Reed. "Commander, you've had more interaction with the Vorn than anyone. What's your assessment?" All eyes turned to Reed. He took a deep breath. The Vorn are technologically superior, yes, but they have weaknesses. Their approach to combat is rigid, predictable. They value order and overwhelming force above all else. And how does that help us? General Harris asked. Reed walked to the holographic display in the center of the room. May I? At President Wilson's nod, Reed activated the system. A three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system appeared. The Vorn will expect us to defend Earth directly. That's what they would do. Concentrate forces around their homeworld. Reed manipulated the display, highlighting various points throughout the system. But we won't. We'll scatter our forces here, here, and here. Admiral Turner studied the map. Those are all minor outposts, mining stations, hardly worth defending. Exactly, Reed said. Places they won't expect resistance. Places where small mobile forces can strike and disappear. Guerrilla warfare, President Wilson said thoughtfully. Against an alien invasion. Reed nodded. The Vorn understand direct confrontation. They expect it. What they don't understand is adaptation, unpredictability. He looked around the room. Our history is filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics. Theory is one thing, General Harris grumbled. Practice is another. Then let's put it into practice, President Wilson decided. Commander, Reed, I'm placing you in charge of a special task force. You'll have whatever resources you need to study Vorn combat capabilities and develop countermeasures. Reed stood straighter. Yes, Madam President. The rest of you will coordinate global defenses. If the Vorn do target Earth directly, we need to be ready. She looked at each person in the room. 1 month. Make it count. 2 weeks later, Reed sat in a small office at the Lunar Research Base, surrounded by screens displaying Vorn ship movements. Since their ultimatum, the alien vessels had remained at the edge of the solar system, occasionally sending small scout ships closer to Earth. A knock on the door interrupted his concentration. Come in. A man Reed didn't recognize entered, carrying a tablet. He was older, with gray hair and glasses that looked oddly old-fashioned in an age of corrective surgery. Commander Reed? I'm Jack Wilson, History Department at Oxford. Admiral Turner sent me. Reed raised an eyebrow. A historian? I was expecting another tactical analyst. Wilson smiled slightly. I am a tactical analyst, just not the kind you're used to. I specialize in historical warfare patterns. Reed gestured to a chair. What can a historian tell me about fighting aliens, Professor? Perhaps nothing, Wilson admitted, sitting down. Or perhaps everything. May I? He pointed to the screens showing Vorn movements. Reed nodded, and Wilson studied the displays for several minutes in silence. Interesting, he finally said. Their patrol patterns are extremely regular, almost ancient. Ancient, Wilson nodded. They move like Persian immortals or Roman legions. Perfect formation, predictable rotations, clear command structure. He looked at Reed. When's the last time human armies fought like that? Reed considered this. Not since before the urban wars of the 2030s. Modern combat is too fluid, too dependent on small unit actions. Exactly. Wilson pulled up data on his tablet and transferred it to Reed's main screen. Look at these historical battle formations spanning Earth's history. Roman testudo, Napoleonic squares, early 21st century fire teams. Reed watched as the display showed the evolution of human battle tactics over centuries. See the pattern? Wilson asked. As weapons evolved, formations loosened. As communication improved, units grew smaller and more independent. The Vorn, they're like an army frozen in time. All the technology in the universe, but their tactical doctrine looks positively medieval. Reed leaned forward, suddenly interested. You're saying they fight like ancient armies despite advanced technology? I'm suggesting, Wilson said carefully, that their entire concept of warfare may be fundamentally different from ours. They appear to value order and hierarchy above adaptability. Their technology has advanced, but their tactics haven't needed to because they've never faced an enemy who forced them to evolve. Until now, Reed said quietly. Wilson nodded. Perhaps. But there's something else you should see. He pulled up another file. This is all the data we have on Vorn physical characteristics. Reed reviewed the information. Stone-like skin, 4 eyes providing exceptional peripheral vision, communication that seemed both verbal and telepathic. They evolved as herd predators, Wilson explained, moving and hunting in groups. Therefore, eyes let them watch in all directions while moving in perfect coordination. Their telepathic abilities, or whatever they are, facilitate instant communication between squad members. Making them perfect soldiers, Reed realized. Perfect soldiers for their style of combat, Wilson corrected. Which is why they can't understand ours. We evolve differently. Humans are persistence hunters. We track, we adapt, we outlast. Our strength isn't in our natural armor or telepathy, it's in our endurance and our creativity. Reed stood and paced the small office. So you're saying we can't beat them at their game? But they can't beat us at ours, Wilson finished for him. At least that's my theory. The problem is we don't know enough about them to be certain. As if on cue, an alarm blared. Reed rushed to the main console. What's happening? Lieutenant Morgan's voice came through the speakers. Commander, we have Vorn ships approaching the asteroid belt mining station. They're moving fast. Reed felt a chill. The mining station was nearly defenseless, staffed by civilians with only a small security detail. Patch me through to Admiral Turner, Reed ordered. Moments later, Turner's face appeared on screen. Reed, are you seeing this? Yes, sir. The mining station doesn't stand a chance if the Vorn attack. Turner's expression was grim. The station has sent out distress calls. We have 2 patrol ships in the vicinity, but they're not equipped for combat against Vorn technology. Reed made a quick decision. Order them to evacuate the civilians but stay in the area. Tell them not to engage directly. And just let the Vorn destroy the station? Turner asked. No, Reed said, an idea forming. Tell them to use the asteroid field. Hide there, set up observation posts. I want every bit of data they can gather on Vorn combat tactics. He looked at Wilson. If the professor is right, we need to confirm the Vorn's weaknesses before the real battle begins. The asteroid belt mining station was a collection of interconnected modules attached to a large metal-rich rock. Nearly 50 miners and their families lived there, extracting valuable minerals for Earth's industries. Captain Lee of the patrol ship UES Swift watched through her view screen as the evacuation ships pulled away from the station. Her orders from Commander Reed had been clear. Save the civilians, then observe and gather intelligence. All civilians clear, Captain. Her first officer reported. Good. Now take us into the asteroid field. Passive sensors only. The Swift slipped between tumbling rocks, using them as cover. The second patrol ship, UES Harrier, did the same on the opposite side of the field. 3 Vorn vessels approached the now abandoned mining station. Unlike their massive mothership, these were smaller, perhaps frigates or destroyers by human classification. They moved in perfect triangular formation. Recording everything, the sensor officer said. Getting good data on their propulsion systems, energy signatures. Captain Lee watched as the Vorn ships surrounded the station. What are they doing? Instead of opening fire immediately, the 3 ships positioned themselves at equal distances around the station. Then, simultaneously, they fired. The station disappeared in a blinding flash. Total destruction, the first officer whispered. There's nothing left but debris. Lee gripped her chair. That level of coordination in their attack, it's like they're a single organism. Captain, the communications officer interrupted. We're picking up a signal from the Vorn ships. I think they're talking to each other. Can you intercept it? Trying, but it's like nothing I've ever seen. Part normal transmission, part something else. It's as if they're sharing thoughts directly. Suddenly, one of the Vorn ships changed course, heading straight for the asteroid field where the Swift was hiding. They've detected us, Lee realized. Evasive maneuvers. Get deeper into the field. The Swift accelerated, weaving between asteroids. The Vorn ship followed, its movements precise but somehow mechanical. They're not adapting to the terrain, the pilot noted with surprise. They're maintaining formation even though they're alone. Lee saw the opportunity. Use the asteroids, get behind that large one ahead. The Swift ducked behind a house-sized rock. The Vorn ship followed the exact same path the Swift had taken, clearly expecting the human vessel to continue in a straight line. Instead, the Swift had stopped and reversed. As the Vorn ship passed, Lee gave the order. Fire everything we have at their engine section. The Swift's weapons weren't designed to take on alien warships, but concentrated fire at close range had an effect. The Vorn ship's engines flickered and failed. Direct hit, the weapons officer called out, but the damaged Vorn ship wasn't helpless. It rotated with surprising speed and fired at the Swift. Evasive, Lee shouted, but it was too late. The blast caught the Swift's port side, tearing through its hull. Emergency systems activated, sealing compartments as atmosphere vented into space. Hull breach in sections 3 through 7, an officer reported. We've lost engines. Lee hit the shipwide comm. All hands abandon ship, get to the escape pods. As her crew rushed to evacuate, Lee stayed at her station long enough to send one final message to Earth Command. Vorn ships destroyed mining station. Swift engaged one vessel. Confirmed their weakness. They don't adapt to unpredictable movements. Their coordination is perfect but rigid. We managed to damage one before they hit us. The Harrier is still undetected. Swift is lost. Sending all sensor data now. She hit the transmission button just as a second blast from the Vorn ship tore through the bridge. Back on the lunar base, Reed received the Swift's final transmission with a heavy heart. Captain Lee and half her crew were lost, but their sacrifice had provided invaluable information. They proved your theory correct, Reed told Professor Wilson as they reviewed the data. The Vorn maintain perfect formation even when it's not tactically sound. They follow predictable patterns. Wilson nodded solemnly. And now they've drawn first blood. The war has truly begun. Admiral Turner's face appeared on the main screen. Commander, we've just received word from the President. The Vorn have sent a message. They say the attack on the mining station was a combat evaluation exercise. They're giving us one more week to, and I quote, demonstrate worthy combat, capability or face systematic elimination. Reed's jaw tightened. They still think this is some kind of test. They don't even recognize they're in a real war. What's our response? Turner asked. Reed looked at the tactical display showing the damaged Vorn ship still drifting in the asteroid field. Tell the Harrier to continue observation but remain hidden, and get me everything we have on electronic warfare systems. Electronic warfare? Wilson asked after Turner's image disappeared. Reed's eyes narrowed. If the Vorn communicate partially through some form of telepathy, maybe we can disrupt it, break their perfect coordination. And if we can't? Reed looked at the images of the destroyed mining station. Then we make them fight our way, in chaotic environments on our terms. They thought they understood combat, Professor. It's time we show them how wrong they are. The red dust of Mars swirled around the colony dome as emergency sirens wailed. Inside the main control room, Colony Director Tom Miller watched in horror as 5 Vorn warships descended from orbit. Everyone to the emergency shelters, he ordered, through the colony-wide communication system. This is not a drill. The Mars colony was humanity's pride, the first permanent settlement on another world. Nearly 5,000 people called it home, most civilians working in research and resource extraction. Its defenses were minimal, designed more for meteor protection than war. Miller opened a direct channel to Earth. Mars colony to Earth Command, Vorn ships in orbit, evacuation in progress, requesting immediate assistance. Millions of miles away, in the war room beneath Geneva, Commander Reed received the transmission. 3 weeks had passed since the asteroid belt incident, and Earth had been bracing for the Vorn's next move. They're attacking Mars, Reed informed the gathered military leaders. Full invasion force. President Wilson's face hardened. How many people are at risk? Nearly 5,000 civilians, Admiral Turner replied, and only 100 security personnel. We need to get them out of there, General Harris said. Reed shook his head. We don't have time. Mars is 3 days away at our fastest speed. But... He paused, an idea forming. Maybe we don't need to evacuate them. All eyes turned to him. What are you suggesting, Commander? President Wilson asked. Reed activated the holographic display, showing the Mars colony layout. The colony has an extensive network of underground tunnels, mining operations, research labs, storage facilities, places the colonists know like the backs of their hands. And the Vorn don't, Professor Wilson added, catching on quickly. Reed nodded. Exactly. If the colonists can get underground, they can fight in an environment that negates Vorn advantages and plays to human strengths. They're civilians, not soldiers, General Harris objected. They don't need to be soldiers, Reed countered. They just need to survive and make the Vorn pay for every inch of ground. He looked at President Wilson. We need to get them instructions quickly. Wilson didn't hesitate. Do it, and prepare our fleet. Even if it takes 3 days, we're going. To Mars. On Mars, Director Miller received Reed's transmission with growing disbelief. You want us to fight? He asked incredulously. We're scientists, engineers, miners, not warriors. Reed's face on the screen was sympathetic but firm. I'm not asking you to win a war, Director, just to survive until help arrives. The underground. Tunnels are your advantage. The Vorn fight in formation in open spaces. Make them come to you one by one in the dark. Miller glanced at his security chief, a former military officer named James Rivera. Can we do this? Rivera considered the question seriously. The mining equipment could be repurposed. Drills, cutters, even the heavy machinery. In the narrow tunnels, they might be effective. And we know the tunnels, Miller realized. Every fork, every dead end. Exactly, Reed confirmed. Set traps. Create false routes. Make them chase shadows while you pick them off from hidden positions. We're sending help, but you need to hold out. As if to emphasize the urgency, the colony dome shuddered under the first Vorn attack. Miller straightened his back. We'll do what we can. Mars colony out. He turned to Rivera. Get everyone underground. And gather every tool, every piece of equipment that could serve as a weapon. We're about to give these aliens a lesson in human resourcefulness. The first Vorn soldiers entered the Mars colony 2 hours later, moving in perfect formation through the abandoned main dome. 3 rows of 10 warriors each, their stone-like bodies protected by shimmering energy fields, weapons at the ready. They found nothing but empty buildings. Their commander, a sub-general named Krav, ordered a systematic search. The Vorn spread, out in groups of 5, still maintaining precise distances between each soldier. In the primary mining tunnel, a group of Vorn soldiers advanced cautiously, lights mounted on their weapons illuminating the dusty passageway. From his hiding place, in a side tunnel, Dr. Peter Williams, a geologist who had never held a weapon in his life, watched them approach. Beside him, 3 miners gripped makeshift weapons, drill bits attached to metal poles, mining lasers reconfigured to higher power. Williams waited until the lead Vorn passed the junction, then pressed the button on his remote. The explosives they had placed, originally used for clearing rock formations, detonated. The tunnel collapsed behind the Vorn group, cutting them off from their companions. At the same time, mining equipment fell from the ceiling ahead of them, blocking their forward path. Trapped and isolated, the 5 Vorn soldiers formed a defensive circle, backs together, weapons outward, a perfect formation for an open battlefield, but useless in the narrow tunnel. From multiple hidden passages, the colonists attacked. Mining lasers burned through Vorn energy shields. Heavy drilling equipment, normally used to bore through Martian rock, proved equally effective against alien armor. The battle was brief and one-sided. When it ended, 5 Vorn warriors lay dead, and the colonists melted back into the tunnel network to prepare their next ambush. Similar scenes played out across the colony's underground system. The Vorn, trained to fight in coordinated groups in open terrain, found themselves at a severe disadvantage in the cramped maze-like tunnels. On Earth, Reed monitored the situation through sporadic updates from Mars. The colony was holding out better than anyone had expected. The Vorn losses were mounting while the colonists, fighting on familiar ground with improvised weapons, had suffered relatively few casualties. They're not adapting, Professor Wilson noted as they reviewed reports. The Vorn keep sending soldiers into the tunnels in the same formations, using the same tactics despite heavy losses. Reed nodded. They don't know how to fight any other way. Their entire combat doctrine is based on overwhelming force and perfect coordination, which means nothing in the tunnels, Admiral Turner added. Their telepathic communication is disrupted, underground. Their formations are useless in narrow spaces, and their technology gives them no advantage in close quarters. Reed studied the latest report from Mars. Director Miller says they've destroyed nearly a third of the Vorn ground forces. But the aliens are bringing in heavier weapons, trying to collapse the tunnel network. President Wilson's image appeared on the main screen. Commander, our fleet is ready to launch. 8 warships, our best. They'll reach Mars in 3 days. Will that be soon enough? Turner asked quietly. Reed couldn't answer. The Mars colony was exceeding all expectations, but they were still civilians fighting professional warriors. Sooner or later, the Vorn would adapt, or simply bring enough firepower to obliterate the entire colony from orbit. We need a diversion, Reed said suddenly. Something to draw Vorn attention away from Mars until our fleet arrives. What did you have in mind? Wilson asked. Reed pointed to a section of the solar system display. Jupiter's moons, the research stations there, small, but strategic. If we can make the Vorn think we're mounting an offensive from Jupiter, they might divert forces from Mars. We don't have enough ships to mount a real offensive, Turner objected. We don't need real ships, Reed replied. Just signals that look like ships. He turned to the communications officer. How quickly can we deploy communication buoys programmed to mimic warship signatures? The officer thought for a moment. 12 hours to program them, another 18 to position them near Jupiter. Do it, President Wilson ordered. Make it look like we're gathering a fleet behind Jupiter's moons. As the officers rushed to implement the plan, Professor Wilson approached Reed. A deception strategy. Quite effective throughout human military history, Reed nodded. Let's hope it works on aliens too. On the Vorn command ship orbiting Mars, General Dorn received the report of another failed assault on the underground complex. His upper eyes narrowed in frustration. Unacceptable, he stated to his officers. These humans are untrained civilians. How are they defeating our elite warriors? Sub-Commander Vex displayed the casualty figures. They refuse to fight properly, General. They hide, they set traps, they strike from shadows. There is no honor in their methods. Honor is irrelevant, Dorn snapped. Results matter. Increase orbital bombardment. Collapse all tunnel entrances. We have detected unusual activity near Jupiter, another officer reported. Multiple ship signatures appearing behind Callisto. Analysis suggests a human fleet gathering. Dorn studied the data. A fleet at Jupiter could threaten his position at Mars, potentially cutting off his forces from their return path. A flanking maneuver, he concluded. Clever, but futile. He made a quick decision. Send 2 warships to investigate and neutralize this threat. Continue operations here. As the orders were relayed, Dorn couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The humans were not fighting according to any combat doctrine he recognized. They refused to meet superior force with direct resistance. Instead, they scattered, hid, struck from unexpected angles. It was unsettling. Back in the Mars tunnels, Director Miller received word of the approaching Earth fleet with enormous relief. They had held out for 2 days, but casualties were mounting. The Vorn had begun systematically collapsing tunnel sections from orbit, forcing the colonists deeper underground. 3 more days, he told his exhausted people. We just need to hold on for 3 more days. Security Chief Rivera looked doubtful. The main life support systems are failing. Air recyclers weren't designed for this many people in the deep tunnels. Miller nodded grimly. I know, but we've come this far. We can't give up now. A young engineer named Anna Park approached them. Director, I have an idea. The Vorn communication system, we've been monitoring it. It's partly electronic, partly something else. Maybe telepathic, maybe quantum. But the electronic part, we might be able to jam it. Miller looked interested. How? The colony's main communication array, Park explained. If we reconfigure it to broadcast on their frequencies, using rotating encryption patterns, we might disrupt their coordination. The array is in the main dome, Rivera pointed out. Under Vorn control, Park nodded. I know, but there's maintenance access through the emergency tunnels. A small team could reach it. Miller considered the plan. It was risky, but if it worked, do it. Take whoever you need. 12 hours later, as the Vorn prepared another assault on the tunnel network, their communication system suddenly filled with static. Orders became garbled. Coordination between units broke down. In orbit, General Dorn experienced the disruption firsthand. The constant background connection with his officers, the shared consciousness that made Vorn military operations so effective, fragmented into chaos. Find the source, he ordered as his ship's systems fluctuated. Locate and destroy it. But the damage was done. On the ground, Vorn units lost formation. Individual soldiers making decisions without the guiding intelligence of their commanders. Some continued the assault on the tunnels. Others retreated to defensive positions. The perfect coordination that defined Vorn combat dissolved. The colonists seized the opportunity, launching counterattacks from multiple tunnel exits simultaneously. Vorn soldiers unused to fighting as individuals fell back in disarray. In the confusion, no one noticed the small Earth ship that dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Martian atmosphere, a fast scout vessel that had pushed its engines beyond safety limits to arrive ahead of the main fleet. Commander Reed had come to Mars personally, unable to wait while others fought his battle. His voice crackled through the colony's communication system. Mars Colony, this is Commander Reed. The cavalry has arrived early. The rest of the fleet is right behind me. In the command tunnel, Director Miller's tired face broke into a smile. Commander, you have no idea how good it is to hear your voice. I'm getting reports of Vorn confusion, Reed replied. You're doing? Miller nodded, though Reed couldn't see it. Our engineer reconfigured our comm array to jam their signals. They don't seem to know how to fight without their hive mind. Perfect, Reed said. Now let's finish this. I'm sending down tactical data on Vorn ship weaknesses. Target their command and control systems first. As the information transmitted, Miller gathered his people for one final push. The Vorn thought they understood combat, he told them. It's time to show them how wrong they were. Above Mars, the first ships of Earth's fleet appeared, weapons, charged and ready for battle. The war for Mars, and perhaps humanity's future, had reached its turning point. The battle for Mars raged across the red planet's orbit. Earth's fleet, though smaller and less advanced than the Vorn ships, fought with unexpected effectiveness. Commander Reed, aboard the flagship UES Defender, watched as human vessels darted between the larger alien warships, striking quickly before retreating. Another hit on the Vorn command ship, Lieutenant Morgan reported. Their shields are weakening. Reed nodded, studying the tactical display. 6 Earth warships against 4 remaining Vorn vessels. The odds were improving, but victory was far from certain. Keep targeting their communication arrays, Reed ordered. Don't let them re-establish their network. On the Vorn command ship, General Dorn struggled to comprehend what was happening. His warriors, the elite of the Vorn military, were losing to a technologically inferior enemy. Without their telepathic coordination, Vorn ships fought as individuals, something they had never trained for. This is impossible, Dorn growled to his bridge officers. Their vessels are primitive, their weapons inferior. Sub-Commander Vex studied the battle data. They do not fight as we expected, General. They avoid direct confrontation, strike vulnerable points, retreat before we can respond effectively. Cowardice, another officer declared. No, Dorn said slowly, his 4 eyes narrowing. Not cowardice, strategy. They know they cannot match our power, so they fight differently. He watched as an Earth ship darted beneath a Vorn cruiser, fired. at point-blank range, then vanished behind Mars's smaller moon. They are adapting. The battle continued for hours, neither side gaining decisive advantage. Then, a transmission broke through on all frequencies. "This is President Kate Wilson, of Earth. General Dorn, hear me. This conflict can end now. Withdraw your forces and we can discuss terms." Dorn's upper eyes pulsed with anger. Surrender? To an inferior species? Unthinkable. But even as he spoke, another Vorn ship exploded, its reactor core breached by a concentrated attack from 3 Earth vessels. "Sir," Vex said quietly, "our forces are at 40% combat effectiveness. Without the coordination network," Dorn made a harsh gesture, silencing him. "Open a channel." The general's face appeared on President Wilson's screen in the Geneva war room. "Human leader, your resistance is unexpected, but futile. We may lose this battle, but the Vorn Collective has many fleets. You cannot hope to survive a full-scale war." Wilson's expression remained calm. "Perhaps, but ask yourself this, General. If your elite force is struggling against our hastily assembled defense, what will happen when you face our full military capacity? When we have time to prepare, to build new weapons specifically designed to target your weaknesses?" Dorn's silence was telling. "We don't want war, General," Wilson continued. "We want to live in peace. But if forced to fight, humans will fight with everything we have. And we are very, very good at adapting to overcome stronger opponents." After a long moment, Dorn responded, "A temporary cessation of hostilities may be practical to reassess." Wilson nodded. "Agreed. Withdraw your forces from Mars orbit. We will not pursue." As the transmission ended, Admiral Turner looked at Wilson with raised eyebrows. "Do you think they'll honor it?" "For now," she replied. "They need time to understand what just happened. So do we." 1 week later, Commander Reed stood before the United Earth Government Council in Geneva. The Vorn fleet had retreated beyond Neptune, maintaining position but taking no hostile action. "The battle for Mars taught us something crucial," Reed explained to the assembled leaders. "The Vorn aren't invincible. They have significant weaknesses we can exploit." He activated the presentation screen, showing footage from the Martian conflict. "First, they rely heavily on their telepathic network for coordination. When we disrupted it, their effectiveness dropped dramatically." Professor Wilson stepped forward. "Second, their combat doctrine is rigid, designed for overwhelming force in direct confrontation. They struggle with guerrilla tactics, asymmetric warfare, and rapidly changing battle conditions." Admiral Turner added, "Our analysis suggests the Vorn have rarely, if ever, faced an enemy that forced them to adapt. Their technological superiority has always been enough." President Wilson considered this information. "So what's our strategy moving forward? They're still technologically superior, and the general mentioned other fleets." Reed nodded. "We use the time they've given us. Develop weapons specifically designed to disrupt their coordination network. Train our forces in tactics the Vorn can't counter. And," he paused, "we learn more about them. Understand why they fight the way they do." "We've been analyzing everything we captured," Professor Wilson said. "Their language, technology, historical records from their ship's databases. It's revealed something fascinating." He displayed a series of alien star charts on the screen. "The Vorn have conquered 12 star systems before encountering us. In each case, they faced species that evolved from solitary predators or prey, animals. Species that, when they developed civilization, built military forces modeled after their natural predator-prey relationships." "What's your point?" General Harris asked impatiently. "Humans are different," Wilson explained. "We evolved as social hunters. Our early warfare was against other humans, enemies who thought like us, adapted like us, learned from defeat. Every human conflict throughout history has been a contest of adaptation, of outthinking an equally intelligent opponent." Reed picked up the thread. "The Vorn have never faced an enemy like us, one that evolved fighting itself. That's why they don't understand our combat methods. They've never needed to develop the flexibility, the creative thinking that human warfare demands." The council chamber fell silent as this realization sank in. Finally, President Wilson spoke. So our greatest weapon isn't technology or numbers. It's our history of conflict. The fact that we've spent thousands of years learning to fight and adapt against ourselves? Exactly, Reed confirmed. The very thing the Vorn criticized, our chaotic, unpredictable approach to combat, is what they can't counter. If you're right, Turner said. We need to press this advantage while we have it, before they adapt to our methods. Reed shook his head. I don't think they can adapt quickly. Their entire civilization, their biology, their psychology, it's all built around hierarchy and order. Change doesn't come easily to them. So what's your recommendation, Commander? President Wilson asked. Reed straightened. We take the fight to them. Not as a full-scale invasion. We're not ready for that. But a mission. A strike at the heart of their fleet to show them what humans are truly capable of. That sounds like a suicide mission, General Harris objected. High risk, Reed admitted, but high reward. If we can capture Dorn himself, force negotiations from a position of strength. President Wilson considered the proposal carefully. Who would lead this mission? Reed's answer was simple. I would. 3 days later, Reed sat in the briefing room of the UES Peregrine, a stealth vessel specially modified for the coming mission. Around him were 20 of Earth's best Special Forces operators, men and women chosen for their adaptability and unconventional thinking. The mission is straightforward, Reed explained. We approach the Vorn fleet using the stealth technology developed from studying their sensors. We board General Dorn's command ship, capture him, and return with him to Earth. Captain Maya Singh, the team's tactical leader, looked skeptical. Straightforward doesn't mean easy, Commander. Once we're aboard, how do we find the general? How? Do we subdue him? Reed nodded to Professor Wilson, who had insisted on joining the mission as a scientific advisor. The Vorn ship layouts are hierarchical, just like their society, Wilson explained. Command centers are always at the highest point, surrounded by layers of defenses. Based on the data we've gathered, we can map a path through their vessel. He displayed a holographic model of the Vorn command ship. Their internal security relies on the same coordination network we disrupted at Mars. We've developed portable jammers that should create corridors of confusion as we move through the ship. Singh studied the model. And the general himself? The Vorn are physically stronger than humans with natural armor. Reed activated another display showing new weapons and equipment. That's why we've developed these sonic disruptors that affect their stone-like skin, neural scramblers that temporarily block their telepathic abilities, and most importantly, adaptive armor that can withstand their energy weapons. The room fell silent as the team examined the new technology. Everything we're using, Reed continued, has been developed by studying Vorn weaknesses. We're not trying to match their strength or technology. We're exploiting the gaps in their capabilities. Singh nodded slowly. Fighting our way, not theirs. Exactly. Questions? A young lieutenant raised his hand. Sir, what if we can't capture Dorn? What's our fallback plan? Reed's expression grew serious. Then we gather as much intelligence as possible and retreat. This isn't about winning a battle. It's about showing the Vorn that humanity isn't the primitive species they thought we were. As the briefing concluded, Wilson approached Reed privately. You didn't tell them the full reason for this mission. Reed glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. They don't need to know yet. If we can access the Vorn central database, we might learn about their homeworld, Wilson finished. Their total military strength. Whether this is just one fleet, or their entire force. Reed nodded. Knowledge is our most powerful weapon right now. Let's hope we get the chance to use it. The journey to the Vorn fleet took 5 days. The Peregrine, running without active sensors or communications, slipped through the outer solar system like a ghost. Its hull, coated with materials that absorbed, rather than reflected energy, was nearly invisible to Vorn detection systems. Reed spent the time studying everything they knew about Vorn psychology. Know your enemy was an ancient human principle of warfare that seemed especially relevant now. As they approached Neptune's orbit, where the Vorn fleet maintained position, Wilson joined Reed on the bridge. Nervous? The professor asked quietly. Reed gave a slight smile. Focused. There's a difference. Indeed. Wilson looked out at the distant stars. You know, throughout human history, we've often feared meeting aliens. We assumed they would be more advanced, more unified, more perfect than us. And instead we got the Vorn, Reed said. Advanced, yes, but with their own limitations. Wilson nodded. Our fractious nature, our history of conflict, the very things we sometimes see as humanity's greatest flaws, may be our greatest strengths against them. The ship's captain interrupted their conversation. Commander, we're approaching the Vorn fleet. Stealth systems functioning at optimal levels. No indication they've detected us. Reed moved to the tactical display. The Vorn fleet was arranged in a perfect geometric pattern, each ship maintaining precise distance from the others. At the center was Dorn's command vessel, larger and more heavily armed than the rest. Maintain course, Reed ordered. Take us alongside the command ship. Prepare boarding teams. As the crew rushed to their stations, Reed felt a strange sense of calm. Everything had led to this moment. His years of military service, the first contact with the Vorn, the battle for Mars. Whatever happened next would determine the future relationship between humans and this alien civilization. The Peregrine slipped, silently alongside the massive Vorn command ship, extending docking clamps to its hull. No alarm sounded, no weapons fired. The stealth approach had worked. Reed addressed the boarding teams one final time before they deployed. Remember your training. Move unpredictably. Don't engage in direct confrontation unless necessary. Our goal is capture, not destruction. Captain Singh checked her weapons. We're ready, Commander. Reed nodded. Then let's show the Vorn what human combat really means. As the airlock opened, revealing the alien ship's interior, Reed led his team into unknown territory. The war had entered a new phase, one that would test humanity's greatest advantage, the ability to adapt, to think creatively, to turn weakness into strength. Inside the Vorn vessel, silver-gray corridors stretched in geometric patterns. The boarding team activated their jamming devices. Immediately, the ship's internal systems flickered. In the distance, they heard the confused sounds of Vorn guards responding to the unexpected disruption. Move out, Reed ordered quietly. Operation Human Advantage is go. The interior of the Vorn command ship was unlike anything Reed had seen before. The corridors formed perfect geometric patterns, every angle precise, every surface smooth and metallic. It reminded him more of a mathematical equation than a military vessel. Motion sensors ahead, Lieutenant Parker whispered, checking his scanner. Standard pattern, 3-second intervals. Reed nodded. In human ships, security systems were typically randomized to prevent enemies from predicting safe moments to advance. The Vorn, however, relied on perfect, unchanging patterns, just like their battle formations. Wait for my mark, Reed instructed the team. 3, 2, 1, move. The squad darted forward between sensor sweeps, using the predictable timing to their advantage. They advanced deeper into the ship, encountering surprisingly little resistance. This is too easy, Captain Singh muttered as they reached a junction. Where are the guards? Professor Wilson studied the ship's layout on his tablet. They're likely concentrated around the command center. The Vorn prioritize protecting hierarchy over securing the entire vessel. Their mistake, Reed said. Deploy. The second jamming device here. A technician placed the small device against the wall. When activated, it emitted a field that disrupted the Vorn's telepathic network within a 100-meter radius. Throughout that zone, Vorn soldiers would be cut off from their commanders, forced to think and act as individuals, something they had little experience doing. The team continued their advance, moving upward through the ship's levels. Occasionally, they encountered Vorn guards, but the aliens appeared disoriented, their movements awkward and uncoordinated under the jammer's influence. The human soldiers made quick work of them using the sonic disruptors, which vibrated the Vorn's stone-like skin at frequencies that caused intense pain without permanent damage. We're approaching the command deck, Wilson reported after they had climbed several levels. Security will be heaviest there. Reed checked his team. No casualties so far. The mission was proceeding better than he had dared hope. Set the final. Jammers. Full spectrum disruption, we hit hard and fast. The squad positioned themselves around the sealed doors to the command center. At Reed's signal, they activated all remaining jammers simultaneously. The effect was immediate. Through the doors, they heard confused shouts and the sound of equipment. Failing. Breach now, Reed ordered. The doors blew inward and the team stormed the command center. Inside, a dozen Vorn officers stumbled about in confusion, their perfect coordination shattered by the jamming field. At the center of the room, on a raised platform, stood General Dorn, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly as he tried to comprehend what was happening. Secure the room, Reed commanded. The team moved with practiced efficiency, subduing the Vorn officers with minimal force. Reed approached Dorn directly, weapon raised. General Dorn, by authority of the United Earth Government, you are being taken into custody. Dorn's upper eyes narrowed while his lower ones widened, an expression Reed couldn't interpret. Commander Reed, this approach, it is not honorable. Combat. It's human combat, Reed replied. Effective, adaptable, and now victorious. For a moment, Dorn seemed ready to resist. Then, surprising everyone, he lowered his weapon. Fascinating. You have defeated our finest warriors, boarded our most secure vessel, and breached our command center with minimal casualties. How? We'll have time to discuss that later, Reed said. For now, you're coming with us. As Singh secured the general with specialized restraints, Wilson moved to the command center's main console. Commander, I need time with their database. Reed nodded. Do it quickly. We don't know how long our advantage will last. While Wilson worked, Reed studied Dorn more closely. The general showed no signs of fear or anger, only curiosity. Fight like no species we have encountered, Dorn said eventually, without order, without predictability. We call it adaptability, Reed explained. It's how humans have survived and thrived. Dorn's head tilted slightly. Against what enemy did you develop such methods? What force required such chaos in response? The question caught Reed off guard. Against ourselves, primarily. Human history is filled with conflict between different groups, nations, ideologies. We've spent thousands of years learning to outthink enemies who think like us. This concept seemed to trouble Dorn deeply. Before he could respond, Wilson called out from the console. Commander, I've accessed their central records. You need to see this. Reed joined the professor, leaving Singh to guard Dorn. What have you found? Wilson displayed a star map showing thousands of systems across the galaxy. The Vorn control over 30 star systems, not just 12 as we thought. But he highlighted a specific region. This is interesting. They've avoided this entire sector for centuries. Why? Reed asked. According to their records, that region is controlled by a species called the Mrek. The Vorn attempted conquest 300 years ago and were decisively defeated. Reed studied the information with growing interest. Are the Mrek more advanced than the Vorn? Not technologically, Wilson said, scrolling through data. But the Vorn records describe them as unpredictable and lacking proper combat discipline. Sound familiar? Reed felt a smile forming. Another species that doesn't fight by Vorn rules. Exactly, and there's more. Wilson brought up another file. The Vorn's attack on Earth wasn't just about testing us. They've been expanding their territory for centuries, conquering species they deem inferior in combat capability. It's their way of maintaining dominance in the galaxy. A preemptive strike, Reed realized. They attack potential threats before they become actual threats. Yes, but we surprised them, just like the Mrek did. Wilson looked thoughtful. If we could contact this other species, form an alliance, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. Singh checked her scanner. Commander, we've got multiple Vorn soldiers approaching. The jamming field is weakening. Reed made a quick decision. Download everything you can, Professor. We're leaving. With the General. Wilson nodded, inserting a data device into the console. Just another minute. As the team prepared for extraction, Reed returned to Dorn. Your soldiers are coming, General. We can make this difficult, or you can order them to stand down and come with us peacefully. Dorn studied Reed with all four eyes. To what purpose? You cannot hope to defeat the entire Vorn collective. Perhaps not alone, Reed admitted, but we don't need to defeat you. Just convince you that a war with humanity isn't in your interest. After a moment's consideration, Dorn nodded. A tactical withdrawal to reassess. I understand this concept. He activated his communication device, issuing orders in the clicking language Reed had heard before. Almost immediately, the alarm stopped. They will not interfere with our departure, Dorn said. I am curious to learn more about human combat philosophy. Reed didn't fully trust the general's sudden cooperation, but they had little choice. Wilson, are you done? The professor removed his data device from the console. Got everything we need. Then let's move out. Back to the Peregrine. Same formation, same precautions. The team retraced their steps through the Vorn vessel, this time with General Dorn in their midst. True to his word, they encountered no resistance. Vorn soldiers stood aside, watching with what Reed interpreted as confusion as their general was led away by human captors. When they reached the airlock where the Peregrine was docked, Reed felt a tension he hadn't realized he was carrying begin to ease. They had done it, completed what many had considered a suicide mission, captured the enemy commander, and gathered crucial intelligence. The journey back to Earth was uneventful. Dorn remained a cooperative prisoner, spending hours in conversation with Reed and Wilson about human history, warfare, and evolution. The general's curiosity seemed genuine, his questions thoughtful and penetrating. Your species evolved fighting itself, Dorn said during one such discussion. This explains much. The Vorn evolved fighting large predators that hunted in predictable patterns. Our coordination, our formation, our discipline, all developed to counter threats that were physically superior but tactically simple. And when you developed advanced technology, you never needed to change your approach, Wilson added. Because it worked against every species you encountered. Until now, Reed said. Dorn's upper eyes blinked slowly. Yes. Until humans. The Peregrine returned to Earth amid celebration. News of the mission's success had spread quickly, boosting morale. Worldwide, President Wilson herself greeted the ship when it landed in Geneva. Commander Reed, she said warmly, once again you've done the impossible. Reed saluted. Just following the principles of human combat, Madam President. Wilson turned her attention to Dorn, who stood flanked by guards. General, welcome to Earth. Dorn studied the human leader. Your world is chaotic, unpredictable, like your combat methods. We call it diverse, Wilson replied. And yes, sometimes chaotic. But that diversity gives us strength. Over the following days, negotiations began between Earth and the Vorn collective. Dorn, acting as representative of his people, displayed a surprising willingness to discuss peace terms. In a private meeting with Reed, Wilson, and President Wilson, the general explained his change in attitude. The data your professor gathered from our ships has surely told you that the Vorn collective is vast, Dorn began. We could continue this conflict for years, decades, but the outcome is no longer certain. Because of what we showed you about human combat? President Wilson asked. Dorn's four eyes focused on her. Partly. But also because of what we learned about your history. You developed your unusual combat methods through conflict with yourselves. Thousands of years of adapting, evolving, outthinking opponents who thought like you. He paused, his stone-like face impossible to read. The Vorn have never experienced this. When we fight among ourselves, it is brief, ritualized, following strict patterns. We never needed to develop the creativity that humans possess. Reed leaned forward. And now you're afraid we'll keep adapting, keep finding new ways to counter your advantages. Not afraid, Dorn corrected. Intrigued. You have shown us a fundamental flaw in our approach to warfare. A flaw the Mrek exploited centuries ago, causing us to avoid their territory ever since. Professor Wilson's eyes widened. You want to learn from us? Yes. Dorn straightened in his chair. The Vorn Collective proposes not just peace, but exchange. Your officers will teach ours about human combat philosophy. Our officers will share our technology and knowledge of the galaxy. President Wilson looked skeptical. And why would we help make your military stronger? Because the galaxy contains threats greater than either of us alone, Dorn replied simply. The Mrek are expanding. Other species develop new technologies daily. Together, humans and Vorn would be formidable. Reed caught the president's eye. The data they had recovered from the Vorn ship confirmed Dorn's claims about galactic politics. An alliance could benefit both species. We'll need time to consider your proposal, President Wilson said finally. Dorn nodded. Of course. Consideration before action, another human trait we might benefit from adopting. 3 months later, Reed stood before a class of 30 Vorn officers in the newly established Interspecies Combat Academy. The facility, built in the hard, neutral territory of Earth's moon, served as the center for the cultural and military exchange program that had grown from the peace treaty. The fundamental principle of human warfare, Reed explained to his alien students, is adaptation. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. No tactic works forever. The moment you establish a pattern, a good opponent will exploit it. The Vorn officers took notes with meticulous precision. They struggled with concepts like improvisation and individual initiative, but they were learning. In the observation room, General Dorn watched alongside President Wilson and Professor Wilson. They find it difficult, Dorn admitted. Our biology, our psychology, everything about us favors order and coordination, but they are trying. And our officers are equally challenged by Vorn combat simulators, Wilson noted. The level of coordination your species achieves is remarkable. President Wilson smiled slightly. Perhaps that's the point. Each of us has strengths the other lacks. Together, we're stronger than either alone. Dorn's upper eyes blinked in what they had come to recognize as agreement. Indeed. The Vorn thought we understood combat until we started a war with humans. Now we understand that true combat mastery comes from combining different approaches, different strengths. In the classroom, Reed continued his lesson. Today we'll discuss asymmetric warfare, how smaller forces can effectively counter larger ones through unconventional tactics. As the Vorn officers leaned forward, eager despite their discomfort with the concept, Reed reflected on how far they had come. From first contact to near destruction to an unlikely alliance, the journey had been unpredictable, chaotic, and ultimately successful, just like human combat itself.